Can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, air. The air element. Like to be able to feel something coming in the air. Like when Phil Collins first sang that song, as young as I was, like that brought a certain depth, like to know that the air can bring on a certain feeling. And in terms of like biblically, like the first time that we're first introduced to the air element in the Bible was when God breathed life into man, the breath of life, the soul, the unseen force that connects all things and shapes our lives is our breath. God breathed the spirit of life into man in its early form. And then the word man in its early form comes from the root word manu, which refers to a human being, regardless of gender. Because, like, what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? The word man is the root word for manu, meaning it's associated with the idea of a thinking being. The word man represents a conscious mind. The power of man translates to mean the power of the mind. So, in an esoteric and metaphysical perspective, we always look at the etymology of a word and what it means in its early form to understand the true meaning and definition. So, God breathed the spirit of life into man, into a conscious being. And so, essentially, the air element is God's breath. Like when you think about air in this way, and it just instead of saying, well, it's just an element, like all the elements, when you think about like their characteristics and their attributes and like how the power that they are, like there's life being breathed into the power of our thought, the power of the consciousness. Power is in thought. And we know that air is linked to thought, creativity, and inspiration. It's often seen as a mediator between the earth and the sky, the air. It's seen as a mediator between the physical and the spiritual. So even when God breathed life into human, he individualized himself into the world. And the word individualized means undivided. Most people that it thinks the contrary, that individualized means that like you're divided, like you're standing alone. But it means that you're undivided, that you're not divided, that you're not separate from. So when God individualized himself into man, when he made man in his likeness and image in the imagination of his mind, he is undivided into human. Like it's it's um it's so profound. So understanding that you're an individualization of God, and God can individualize himself into an infinite number of distinct beings or units of consciousness, right? Because we're all just walking around like units of consciousnesses and these flesh shoots. But God can individualize himself into an infinite number of distinct beings and not be separate from any of it. Only God can do this because God is spirit, and spirit can't be damaged or destroyed in any kind of way. It cannot deteriorate. Thoughts are air elements, which is typically a masculine term, which is a masculine element. Masculine moves, earth is feminine, like as in like earth is in mother nature. Historically, we have two masculine elements and two feminine elements. The two feminine elements are earth and water, and there's a balance between the four. But in reality, each of the elements actually have both qualities of gender, because if you understand the Hermetic principle, the law of gender, it says that there are masculine and feminine principles in each atom, which is in each thing. So earth can be seen as feminine when we think about earth being nurturing and having fertility. But earth can also be thought as being masculine when we think about strength and structure. And the same applies to all elements like air, because air, can be seen as masculine and forceful when we think about wind and tornadoes, but, it could be just as soft as a breeze, very sultry and very feminine, right? So it depends on the context and the qualities that are being emphasized in each element, in which they may show certain characteristics and attributes of either masculine or feminine, because the law of gender is not separated from either one. The law of gender consists of both genders. And, if we want to go down the rabbit hole of arguing, the gender of God, being a masculine element, or all things coming from a masculine element, but that element within itself would have had to possess feminine attributes because it created the feminine, right? So it had to come from somewhere that was already existing within it. But back to air. Air is something that we all share. We borrow it, we don't own it. And as soon as we take it, we got to give it back. Because as soon as we inhale, we have to give it back in every exhale. And when we're no longer breathing, there is no longer any life in our physical body. The breath that we had to return it. One last exhale. And we're no longer breathing. We took our last breath. So it's something that we borrow, and it carries sound waves. The wind howls, making it essential for music, for communication. Instruments rely on it for its sound, and humans, we rely on it when we talk and as the air passes through our vocal cords. Singers use it. Air is omnipresent. It's with you right now, right here, and it's also with me at the same time. And it is everywhere. It's massive. It's taking up a lot of space, but somehow it doesn't take up any room. And it is infinite. It connects us all, and it has no weight. It's weightless, and it's an invisible force, yet in high massive thrust of winds, it can uproot a tree, or an 80,000-pound big rig Santa Ana winds in California, or tornadoes, back east and down south. Air moving in massive forces can be destructive, but it's also utilized and useful when contained. Just like all the elements, when they're contained, they take on there's different properties that you can benefit from it if you're not doing it to the extreme, because birds use it to fly, so do airplanes. Boats use wind to sail. You can't see air. It's not something that we can see, but we know that it's there. And without it, we're unalive. Now, if that ain't God, I don't know what is. It's everywhere at the same time. It's throughout, it's within us. Like, that is just so, like is this an elevated conversation that we're having right now? Are you like, nah, like this is a real conversation right now that we're having, because we take so many things for granted and we don't recognize the value for what it is, just as something as simple as the elements and how they play a role in our life. So the next time you exhale, the next time you feel the wind, like, let that be a reminder of creation, of the life that you are breathing, that we're living, that we are here. How amazing is that? Moving on to our first air sign, Aquarius. James, the disciple, son of Zebedee, often called James the Greater. And the origin of the word greater comes from the Old English word grentra, which is a comparative form of the word great, and ultimately traces back to Proto-Dramatic grantua, meaning coarse or thick grains. And so esoterically, the act of going from a physical to mental processing would be like being seen as the grinding of the grains, like metaphorically as the process of processing information and ideas in your mind, like you're grinding the grains. Just as grains are broken down and transformed into something usable, so too are your thoughts and your experience as we process and integrate and understand them. So, in this sense, this is a mental act of reflection, as this disciple is a digestion of knowledge, as Aquariuses are. They are constantly grinding of the grains, right? And so this disciple, because this is an active act, it's an air sign, it's constantly moving, it's not passively waiting for its enlightenment. He's actively pursuing it in the thick of it, even if it means grappling with a divine being. James, he grabbed the heel of an angel in the Bible, and an angel is just a divine idea, and an idea coming from the divine creator, coming from our higher self, right? From the source that the creator is. And so the encounter with the angel, with the divine idea, even metaphorically suggests that he's about to go through a major transformational experience. So Aquarius is linked to change, new beginnings, transformation experiences, personal transformation. And Aquariuses, I don't know if y'all know any Aquariuses, but they're very provocative, right? They're not just a typical piece of information or a person, right? There's something that is very intriguing and eccentric about them. They challenge existing beliefs and assumptions and ideas. Jesus himself was like that. He challenged tradition, compelling, even though that he was challenging and compelling, there was something about him that was magnetic and drawing you in, drawing your attention. And you can't just easily dismiss this divine idea, right? You got to say, well, wait a minute. Like, so in the Bible, when James started to wrestle with this angel, the divine idea, when it began, you can look at this process as like that wrestling as an internal process where you're kind of grappling with the idea and questioning it, trying to reconcile with your current understanding and like what you're trying to understand. And like, so when I think of wrestling and mentality, I think of mind being expansive thought like dough. So this wrestling in a context, I think of like it being where you're like kneading the dough, right? Like you're massaging the idea, you're kind of wrestling with the idea. So it can be uncomfortable, enlightening ideas, they disrupt our comfort zone because growth and expansion is uncomfortable because we have to face truths about ourselves, truths about our ego. So, we don't want our ego to be challenged, our sense of security, our foundation, some of the things that we built our life and our foundation on, these principles, could have been our foundational life pillars. And we're like, what do you mean to tell me that this is no longer true? Right. So it's the Aquarian where it challenges the status quo, and it's not purely intellectual. It's something that you have to go through within your emotions, and that process involves letting go, being willing to say, you know what, this old belief, this pattern no longer serves me, and now I'm going to fold on that, right? I'm going to fold the dough over, and I'm going to continue to take this difficult necessary step, because ultimately this is going to challenge me, it's going to stretch, it's going to transform me. This is what James represents, is understanding that what it takes to fully integrate and massage in a divine idea, to have that divine understanding. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, and it's the planet that is the energy of this planet is associated with innovation, the humanitarian spirit, revolution, and rebellion. Aquariuses are also independent thinkers. They challenge the status quo and question established beliefs. And they're unique and special, but not because we're not all unique and special, but because they are so steadfast in protecting their individuality in the face of distraction and change. Like, they stand their ground and they don't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? Like, they standing on their weirdness. Like, so it represents the can I even pronounce the word eccentricity? The rebellion, the upheaval, and the raw genius that Aquarius is, being able to see the bigger picture, the radical change, not rejecting conformity at all cost, and not afraid to choose chaos over structure, because sometimes getting things into order can look like chaos. Sometimes getting things into order can look like chaos. Think about when you're cleaning up. Sometimes you got to pull everything out, right? It can look like there's a whole upheaval happening before we get things into place and into divine order, because we understand and we're challenging ourselves to deal with the change. It's the process of moving things around into the newness. That's Aquarius energy. But speaking of divine order, let's move on to our next air sign, which is Libra. Libra is James, the son of Alpheus, as in Alpha and Omega, Alpha, Alpheus, maintaining the equilibrium, establishing divine order and harmony and justice with the beginning of the end. The beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. And we know that the Alpha is your thought, because all is the mind, and in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word is thought. It's the beginning. So James was all about divine order, the importance of balancing our emotions, establishing that level of divine order within self. This is what Libra and the disciple of our mind, James, represents. It seeks mental equilibrium. This is how using our imagination can help us reframe negative thoughts, to find creative solutions to problems by imagining solutions, by learning how to cultivate inner peace, just by using our imagination to awaken our mind to harmonize those complex systems. This is what Libra is. It's about looking at the scales and harmonizing complex system. When we think about harmony, harmony is not blending. Harmony allows each note to operate on its own, right? Independently. We think about a choir, right? We got the sopranos is with the sopranos, and the altos is with the altos, and the tenors is with the tenors, and they all sing in their individual key, and they harmonize. Without harmony, it's impossible for us to succeed. Shout out to Slum Village. You know what I'm saying? That's the lyric from their song. So Libra also represents the hermetic principle of cause and effect when we think about divine balance and divine order, because Libra understands the effects of things and it judges them accordingly. Libra, the son of Alpheus, as in Alpha and Omega, it's the first and the last. The first thought that you end up with is the last thought that you're going to end up with, because it understands that thought is the only cause. And that thought follows a sequence in order. And that is what you end up with. It seeks it seeks to get things into sequence, into divine order, because it understands that with each sequence comes a consequence, right? You have a sequence of thoughts, and then you're going to have an effect, the law of cause and effects. So you are responsible for your sequence of thoughts because they eventually have a consequence, and you're responsible for your thoughts, actions, and behaviors because they will always have some form of consequence. Whether they're positive or negative on the side of polarity is up to you based on the vibration and the frequency of the thoughts that you have. So this faculty of your mind, Libra, likes to weigh things on the scales, to consider those different viewpoints, and it requires and it desires fairness, the ability to imagine someone else, imagine yourself in someone's shoes. To be able to do this, you got to be able to understand diverse perspectives, to be able to find common ground. This is why Libra represents the sign of the scales, right? It's the sign of adjustment, modification, making room for other viewpoints outside of self. This is all what Libra is and what Libra is about. So Libra is also symbolic because it represents the scales and balance in terms of Ma'at, which is a Kemetic term for balance. It's the Kemetic principle, the deity that describes the attribute of what it means to be balanced and harmonious, which is the same attributes of Libra. And scales were originally used as a unit of measurement, which in terms of the scales of Ma'at or Anubis, it's weighing your heart on a scale compared to a feather, if your heart can be as light as a feather. So it's used as a frequency of measurement to determine the weight of something, right? And it represents the unit of measurement of the frequency of thought when we think about Libra as a faculty of the mind. So your thought is the inner ruler in terms of measurement, and it's also ruling you, and it's your ruling God because God is thought. So you're the judge, the juror, and the criminal all at the same time. And so when we think about this particular faculty of our mind and this energy, we have to ask ourselves, do we have the right judgment? Do you have the ability to righteously judge your thoughts? Are you about your Father's business? Father as in thought, the mighty mover. Are you about looking at the business of what's going on in your mind? Are you seeking to understand what's going on in your mental business? Are you minding your own business? Are you minding your business? Because those thoughts are going to follow a sequence, and those sequences are going to lead to a consequence as you're going to be judged. So by your thoughts, you're justified, and by your thoughts, you are condemned. As a man thinks, so is he, whatever that is. And being that thoughts are, of an air element, they come and glow like clouds. We have over 70,000 thoughts per day, according to neuroscience. Like, we think about clouds, they're constantly coming and going. It's like the wind as an air element. But how often do we cling to thoughts that are really just meant to be passing by? Like, how often do we continue to give life into something? We act like these thoughts are immutable facts instead of transient beliefs and just passing by. We keep them near and we repeat them in the repasses of our mind, and we have access to power of revision. We have access to replaying in our mind, like what we learned and what we appreciate going through that experience. We have the power to redeem our thoughts because we're the judges, right? We're either condemning that experience, or we can liberate ourselves from that mental bondage by making those amends because we're judging ourselves by our mental experiences and our thoughts. So we have to be able to really to look at what is going on within our mind and make the proper judgment, because we're the ruler. Libra is also governed by the planet Venus, which is extremely attuned to aesthetics and love and beauty. But Venus also embodies a deep understanding of the most grand and abstract measures of beauty, like rhythm and poetics, and also the golden rule. For some of y'all that don't know what the golden rule is, it means treat others as you like to be treated, or in the Bible and biblical text, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And this is perfect for Libra and the scales of Ma'at, because it represents the law of karma, which is the law of cause and effect, which means karma in Sanskrit language means come back. What you, like Lauryn Hill said, don't you understand, man? Universal law, what you throw out comes back to you, star, right? It comes, whatever you put out, it comes back. Whatever thought you begin with is what you end up with in one shape or form. So we want the same effects. They want effects. Some cause effects. They want effects. Some cause effects. Anyway, moving on to our air sign, Gemini, the polarity, the duality of the twins, the twins. They be twinning, y'all. Such contradicting behavior in nature is, duality of the twins in Gemini. The Gemini energy rules communication and intellect, expressing themselves freely. They get easily bored, with routine, and they're in constant change and movement, like all air signs. They're considered the social butterflies. So this particular disciple was Simon Peter, which is a dual name to begin with. And Simon Peter represents righteous hearing, to only hear the word of good, to only hear the thoughts that are going to be serving, that are from the heavenly place. Because Gemini rules communication. So it's saying, okay, we're going to communicate. This is what we're going to communicate about. And because Gemini rules communication, Geminis are also extremely intelligent, and they have an inherent duality. There's moments where Simon Peter himself, this particular disciple, had moments of strong faith alongside his denials of leadership and impulsiveness, much like a Gemini. These individuals are very complex. They're walking contradictions, much like the twin nature of the duality that it is, positive or negative, opposite sides of the pole. We think about Geminis, famous Geminis, Kanye West, Kendrick Lamar, but even Donald Trump, or even Tupac. These are revolutionary Geminis that cause upheaval, and we see that there are contradictions and things that they do that are completely very polar opposite. And it's like you never know what you're going to get, because they are listening to two different aspects of their own. Like, that's what happens when it comes to polarity. The whole concept of, having the angel on one shoulder and then the devil on the other. Like, who are you going to listen to? So Simon Peter represents righteous hearing. There was a childhood game that I used to play called Simon Says. Have you ever played that game when you were a kid? Well, Simon Says is a game where you only listen and obey the command assignment. So it could be like, Simon says, touch your nose, or touch your face. And it's like, okay, if you didn't say Simon says and you touch your face, then you weren't listening. You weren't hearing when Simon said it. And so it's developing the discipline to only hear the commands of your higher self, to only hear the commands of Simon. Only listening to Simon because what Simon says is so. Simon is the communication and the correspondence, because what you say to yourself, within yourself, to yourself, about yourself, It's more than just words, it's a command. Like, I want to love myself like Kanye loves Kanye. Like people say that because of the command and the belief. And it's sending out these vibrations that signal the universe of what you want to realize into your physical reality and declare your state of being. Because we're constantly co-creating our reality, creation itself, all day, every day. There's no days off. We have over 70,000 thoughts per day. I can't emphasize and say that number enough, but try to count to 70,000. Like, it will take you a while. And to understand that some people may have more than that, right? That we're constantly thinking. There's constantly this communication highway happening on our vagus nerve, in our mind, even in our subconscious mind. When we're sleeping, we're still thinking all day, every day, no days off, no vacation, no holidays. You're always on the job. You know what I'm saying? And so we're always praying. Really, that's what prayer is correspondence when you're communicating and talking to God. So this is something that is happening forever and ever, as consciousness will always seek to expand and improve upon itself. So we have to make sure that you are communicating and having the right conversations. And there's only one power. There's only one power of mind. There's only one consciousness that we're a part of. But there are two distinct influences. And this is what universal law, the Hermetic law, tells us, that their duality does exist. There's different influences that we have. I, the Lord, do all things. I make evil, I kill, I destroy, but I also give life. So much like the duality and the polarity of creation itself is Gemini energy. That one power is capable of producing either negative or positive events and conditions. Yes, it all depends on how you use that one power to be able to produce either positive or negative events and conditions. You have the power to attract misery. You have the power to attract suffering and failure. You have the power to attract wealth and abundance and love, joy, and happiness and peace. Heaven and hell is all in the mind. The kingdom of heaven is within you. And you have access to it because of the dual nature and the polarity and the law itself. Because I remember I was like thinking within my old spiritual walk, like in 2017, I'm like, well, if bad just didn't exist, right? Like then, but that's like saying if number one doesn't exist, then you're not going to have number two. If two doesn't exist, you're not going to have number three. So there's levels and layers to this, because it's just how nature is and how nature works. And so we know that there are Geminis, that there is polarity, there's duality. This is what this sign Gemini, what this disciple is letting us know, that it's within us, and this is how it works, and this is how we can use our mind. And even in the world of neuroscience and like great philosophers, Neville Goddard research, and I love Neville Goddard. Some new age ones, you have like Dr. Dispenza. He talks a lot, very similar to like Neville Goddard. We're just doing research in the quantum physics and understanding how the mind works. But Neville Goddard, he uncovered something very remarkable about human consciousness. When you focus your intention on something specific, you activate neural networks that literally reshape your brain's architecture. But here's what is so fascinating that is in this reshaping. It's not limited to our physical brain. Think about the last time that you intensely desired something, and how you were able to bring it to you. The study showed that in that moment, you were generating electromagnetic fields that extended far beyond your physical body. And we know that our heart emits strong electromagnetic frequency that can be seen up to 60 to 80 feet outside of our body, that how we're impacting the quantum field and how we emit energy and frequencies. And so these fields interact with the quantum fabric of reality itself. It's scientifically proven, because God is science and God created science, like it's in God, but it's scientifically proven. The laboratory data that revealed it reveals something so extraordinary, so that when you maintain attention and focus on a specific outcome for just 3 minutes, just 3 minutes a day, like in intervals, you trigger what they call to be manifestation. It has sequences and consequences in your nervous system, and these sequences create measurable changes in your brain chemistry. And that research demonstrated that what we focus on literally alters our DNA expression. When you direct your attention toward what you want rather than what you don't want, you activate a dormant genetic potentials associated with enhanced creation abilities. Like, this is something that they were able to study in a lab to show the power of your thought, the power of you being able to think something either positively, focusing on it, or negatively focusing on something. This is the law of correspondence: as above, so below; as within, so without; as the universe, so the soul. Your cells are constantly listening to your internal dialogue. Every thought you think creates biochemical changes to either support or inhibit your natural ability to attract what you desire. Creating a positive or a negative charge is either going to attract or repel what you desire. It's so fascinating to me, because Neville Goddard discovered, brain quantum coherent networks, the neural networks. And, Dr. Dispenza says, brain cells that are no longer fired together are no longer wired together. He talks about like restructuring and reprogramming our brain and, our neural network to synchronize our brain waves to the frequency that we want to attract. All of that it happens in here. To know that our mind literally is the only thing that creates anything, that does anything, that moves anything in the physical world. It all begins with a thought. And this is done when our brain produces a specific electromagnetic frequency that harmonizes with similar frequencies in our environment. Hence, like attracts like, because we're sending out a frequency, a harmonic frequency in the air, waves, as sound, vibration. And so when you maintain focus and it influences the quantum field around us, it creates these new neural pathways, these new connections that draw in and attract our experience. It is pure quantum physics. This is why we have to discipline our thoughts and our feelings and our actions to look upon the happiness, the joy, and practicing what that feels like and maintaining that. Some of us feel guilty for feeling good for long periods of time. Like, not guilty good. I'm not talking about like devious good, like when you feel good for doing something bad, but like genuinely like feeling good and proud of yourself, even if it's just little incremental things of just congratulating yourself for knocking things off your list for the day, or achieving like, what, I'm proud of myself. I got up, I did this, like, what, I may not have did everything on my list today, but like, I'm gonna reprogram the conversation I'm having and what I'm saying to myself to only hear the good, right? All these creative achievements and these things that I was able to attain, telling my mind what to think, telling my feelings how to feel, telling my body how to act. This is Gemini, right? These are all of the 12 disciples. And so, I mentioned earlier that I was going to do a video on the 12 disciples and of the mind and how it pertains to the 12 zodiacs and how it all related to the mind. And now that we're at the close of this last air element and describing earth, water, fire, and air, as well as the 12 disciples, putting it together, what does all this mean? Nobody knows what it means. It's provocative. It gets the people going, right? The 12 disciples are the 12 cranial nerves, the 12 faculties of the mind, the one, the creator. And the 2 is the birth portal, the balancing point between conscious and subconscious. The birth portal, when you were in your mother's womb and breathing in water, and you left that portal and breathe your first breath. And unity in becoming in subsequent numbers. So you have 12, 1, and 2. And 1 and 2 becomes the 3, which is the Holy Grail, the 1. 1, 2, through. Understanding that you're coming through this portal and the one and the many. Therefore, 12 means the birth portal to the one, the birth portal to our higher consciousness. And this is done by the activation of the 144,000. And the 144,000 in the Bible is not a particular number of people, of souls that are going to be able to get to heaven. No. If you take it in that literal context and sense, you think that, oh my gosh, there's billions of people on this planet. And you mean to tell me there's only 144,000 of them going? No, that's not what that number means. The 144,000 is a genetic activation code within your own DNA cells, not people. 144,000, we have 1 + 4 + 4 = 9. Right now we're in a year of 9. We're the year of the snake. Consciousness is what 9 represents for the most part. It's a feminine number. And in the Bible, the number of consciousness is 9. That's why Jesus casted the net. And he got 9 on the side of consciousness. It stands for a higher aspect of spiritual consciousness. It stands for the activation and the redeeming yourself from earth. To redeem means to resurrect and to awaken yourself from the earth. Like a seed sprouts from the earth and grows, that's an activation of your self. Redemption meaning your lower nature that is sacrificed to let go, to sprout, to let go of your old identity that you do in order to be able to be raised up in spiritual awareness. And like the 144,000 petals of the main chakra, or the coronal, located at the summit of the cranium, represents the 144 rays of light from all of the 7 chakras, the 7 laws, right? It's a center of energy within our body that helps us gain balance and vibrations of the divine creation that travel through the cosmos. When we think about the light rays of light and the experiment that was done with the triangle and that particular study. I'm gonna have to do a video on that, because that particular had the 7 rays of light, and then it turned into the 1, which was, it reminds you of the Pink Floyd logo with the triangle and the rays of light and the 1. But the other part of that study that was done, when you put another triangle upside down next to it, those 7 rays of light, it transcends and transforms back to the 1. So that all those colors eventually turn back into one light. And so that's all filled with light. So we think about how light travels, how air travels, and how air moves. We're thinking about the air element within the air signs and how it constantly is taking on shape and form and being in multiple places at once, but it all comes back to its main source and to source of creation, which is why we don't own our breath. When we breathe, we have to give it back. And so even as we are different experiences and units of consciousness in these different vessels and different beings, we're all returning back to being able to have our eye be single and our whole body be filled with light by activating our genetic cells within our body, by learning how to discipline the faculties of our mind through our 12 disciples, through the elements, through each sign that is a part of us, that is within us. Whatever your sun sign is, you still have traits of Libra, you still have traits of Leo or Capricorn or whatever, right? You still have those aspects in your actual birth chart, but more importantly, in you, because it is a faculty and an aspect of your mind. So I hope that you all enjoyed this 4-part series on the 12 disciples and the 12 zodiacs and the 4 elements, as it is a part of us and the faculties of our mind and consciousness. So next week, I'm going to be dropping a video on the power of imagination and how it is something that we can use. It's a very, very powerful tool when it comes to manifestation. Like our imagination was hijacked at a very young age. We were using it to fantasize about Disney characters when we could have been using it in so many other ways to benefit us. So I'm going to share with you what I understand from an esoteric and metaphysical perspective when it comes to using the imagination. So make sure you like and subscribe as we continue on this journey of exploring the 7 hermetic principles, the natural law, and understanding how the mind, how the universe works, because we are all on a path to ascension, taking it all the way up to the top, y'all. So till next time, peace out and be well.